Absolutely. Thank you so much, Peppa. I'm Paige. I'm an alcoholic, and welcome everyone. So what we're going to be doing today, it's a little different than how we normally do here on Wednesdays. But last week we broke down fears, and we explained how we get the columns, what we do with the columns, how we get through these fears. And what I typically like to do is run through a few examples. And to nobody's surprise, I didn't do the best job of managing my time. Shock! Surprise! Stunned. Who would have guessed? And because we were doing a little bit of, wrapping up some other stuff, and we didn't get to do too many examples. And so what I thought could be really helpful, especially as we go through column 3 and column 4, the best way to learn inventory is to do inventory. So what I will do is I'll do a quick review of what the columns are, what the process looks like. And my hope is that some of you guys, and I know nobody here has fears. I know, just you're all very brave and there's no fears. But someone might have a fear or two. And what I would do, and what I figured I would do, is I would take those fears through the columns. Not like just imperfectly, it's not going to be super specific, but just to get an idea of how we do it. And so that's what we're going to do today. So if you want, throw your fears in the chat. I'll get to as many of them as I can. And while that's happening, let's talk about fears. Just a little bit of review. So we have this 4-column inventory. And just like we did with resentments, we're going to use these 4 columns. Now, and also, just as we did with resentments, we're going to move and work 1 column at a time. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a look at column 1. And as we're writing that inventory, we're going to grab all the fears that we could find and that we saw in our 4th column of resentments. And we're going to take all those fears and write them down. So it'll be fear of rejection, flip the page, fear of abandonment, flip the page, fear of amends, flip the page, fear of relapse, flip the page. And we're going to go through all those fears. And ultimately, what we're looking at, and what I believe Rob probably put in the chat, if I guessed correctly, I didn't see it, so I'm doing this based on vibes, was the idea that all our fears are tied into fear of not getting what I want, or fear of losing something that I have. Because that's what we're looking at. We're looking at these self-centered fears. And when we get all of those fears done, written out in column 1, fears from the 4th column of our resentments and fears that we might have on our heart, we write them down. And then we get into column 2, which is, why do I have this fear? Maybe because it's painful, because it's happened before. It means that people won't love me, etc., etc. Now, if I haven't been very thorough in my 1st column, like if I only have a couple fears, that 2nd column can illuminate other fears that I might have. But a little like helpful piece of information is that if I'm grabbing my fears from the 4th column of my resentments, I typically got a lot to work with. So then when we get all of that done, we have a look at how has self-reliance failed me. And what that means is, how has me relying on me and my power either created the fear, made the fear worse, or caused the fear to come into fruition, which is to say, made the fear happen. And so especially if this is our first ever 4-step inventory, we can start with our most alcoholic sort of day. Our piss in our pants behind the dumpster, not you guys, but somebody like me with my pinky up because I'm a lady. Our most just drunken debauchery sort of day, and move forward. And then when we get those column 3s done, what we're going to do is we're going to say a prayer. And we say that prayer before we dive into that 4th column. And just like we did with our resentments, we pray right on 4th column. Pray right on 4th column. Now the prayer is God. And again, I'm a Canadian, so I can't help but toss in a little please. It comes with the maple syrup. It's the best I can do. So how I say it is, God, please remove my fear and direct my attention to what you would have me be. What you would have me be. And when I say the fear prayer, I like to say what the fear is. So if it's fear of rejection, God, please remove my fear of rejection and direct my attention to what you would have me be. And then I write on how God reliance can overcome this fear. And how we do it is we take what we wrote in the third step, or in the third column, and we flip it and write how. And that will become that'll become a little bit more obvious, or a little simpler to understand as we go through some of these examples in the chat. And that will be that surface level. And that surface level is going to give us the directions on how to get to that place of be. But with almost every single fear, the exception being fear of relapse, we have that deeper level. And that deeper level is even if. So even if that fear happens, even if that fear comes into fruition, and sometimes I like to take that even if, and then I take that fear to its most extreme conclusion. Even if I rely on God, I will be okay, and I will use this experience to help others. So as we go through some of these examples today, I'm gonna do my best, because I've written a lot of inventory. I should have worn my inventory behooves me hoodie. That would have been the outfit of the day, but I didn't coordinate that well, which on brand for me, not coordinating. But as we go through these examples, we're gonna get a feel for it. And just another helpful thing is I have when I work with sponsees, this will be a surprise. This idea that like, girl, you have the attention span of a gnat. And that is true for somebody like me. I am just all over the place. And so what happens is a lot of times if somebody's like, hey, could you help me with this fear? I do it in voice to text so that I can remember what I've said and remember what I've put down. And and then I would have to do the same fear over and over again, because it's rude how not unique all of us are. I thought I was special, just like everyone else. And so I would do the same fears again and again and again. And so I was like, why don't I just put this in a document? So I put all the fears that I had helped people with in a document, and it's 128 pages, so don't print it off unless you're not paying for your ink, of just examples of column 3 and column 4. And so it's useful to search. So I'll make sure I pop that in the chat after, if somebody reminds me, because I will likely forget, and I'll put it in the WhatsApp chats as well. And so let's have a look at some inventory. So I'm going to scoot to the very first one. And so that fear of what others think. So that's the first one that I clocked. And so fear of what others think. Why do I have this fear? Because I've been judged. I've been judged in the past because it's painful. Because it means that people aren't going to like me and I'm going to be alone and die alone forever. Nobody else spirals like that. But those are some examples of what could go in column 2. And so what could we put in column 3? So again, column 3 is how self-reliance has failed me. And actually, maybe for this one, I'll make sure I'll have the screen share up so you guys can just see it. So how has self-reliance failed me in terms of this fear of what other people think? So let's have a look at what happens when I rely on self. Let's say this was our first inventory. Well, when I rely on self, what am I doing? I'm drinking. And I am drinking, and I am, wet pants, dancing on the table. And actually, the joke I always make, so how could I not? I stole your car, I slept with your husband, and I peed on your carpet. Followed up with, I would never. It was linoleum. And for those that have heard that again, a whole lot, I know that's, girl, we know. But it's just a classic. So how has self-reliance failed me in terms of the fear of what other people think? Well, on self-reliance, I'm drinking, and I'm behaving in ways that are disgustingly, even perhaps dangerously antisocial, to quote the book. I'm behaving in ways where, man, I'm full of debauchery and degradation, and I'm doing things I shouldn't, and therefore more likely to be judged. Another way to continue on this track, even when I'm sober, I could look at, am I engaging in behaviors that I know intuitively are not aligned with my values, morals, and beliefs? Am I engaging in behavior that's maybe not drinking, but in things that I know I shouldn't be doing? Another thing that we can look at, and I know you guys can't relate to this, but your girl, she's a little codependent, a little, so minimizing it quite a bit. And I will actively and intentionally seek my sense of worth, identity, value, esteem from what I think you think of me, which I will point out is different than what you think of me. That's completely different. It is what I think you think of me. And what that means is that changes the orientation of all my social interactions. They are focused on what I can get. And when I show up to social interactions with the orientation of what I can get, that can be really draining. That can be really damaging. Another thing that I know I've done is I will operate with walls and masks and ego and image maintenance. So I'm trying to pretend to be somebody that I know that I'm not. It's just so that you'll like me, and I'll contort myself. I'll make myself fit into a box that I don't belong in just so I think that you will think well of me. And I'll tell you, some of the most painful times in my life is where there was a tremendous distance from who I was and the mask that I was presenting to the world. Another area in how has self-reliance failed me is that I avoid intimacy and vulnerability and transparency that ties into the walls and masks. One of the things that I do is I see the world through this ladder. I call it the hierarchy, where I think there are people that are up at the top of the ladder, and then there's people near the bottom, and I'm low but near the bottom, but not all the way there. And one of the things that I will do is I will judge others. I will criticize others, and I will gossip about others to give myself a little boost on that ladder, a little boost of self-esteem. And as a result, I'm around and spending time with people who are more likely to be judgmental, critical, and to gossip about me, which exacerbates that fear, that worsens that fear. Another thing that we can look at is even sober. I on my own power, am not always the most mindful. And I'm hurting people, I'm stepping on toes, I'm overstepping, and I don't even notice that I'm doing it. And when I do it, man, I don't stop. And I don't have the skills or tools to repair the relationship. So I avoid. And heck, even maybe I just avoid social interactions altogether. I'll isolate and then no one will judge me. Or they'll judge me for not being around, but I don't notice because I'm not there. So those are examples of how self-reliance has failed me. So let's say the prayer. God, please remove my fear of what other people think of me and direct my attention to what you would have me be. And now we'll see why I had to do voice to text, is because I'm going to try to remember as best I can and hit the points one for one, but I'm going to get the order wrong, so just bear with me. So the first thing I remember speaking about was the pissing on the carpet. So on God reliance, I'm going to be working these 12 steps as a way of life like my life depends on it, because it does. And as the result of that, I am going to stay sober. And when I am sober, I don't know about you, but my pants are dry, the cars and the husbands are where they're supposed to be. You know what I'm saying? Like, I am just baseline behaving in a better way. Also, as I work these 12 steps as a way of life, I actively and intentionally will seek my sense of value and worth from God. What happens is I take these 12 steps, it cracks open within me that inherent value and worth that was already there. And so when my sense of value and worth, my sense of identity, my sense of who I am, when that is coming from God, a higher power, the creator, the spirit of the universe, I don't need to try to get it from you. I don't need to do that. And so what happens is instead my orientation in all my relationships is about what I can give. It's like that clearing away the channel so that unconditional love, acceptance, patience, peace, that can flow through me. And I can give to others. And so when the orientation of my relationships is about what can I give, they tend to go a little bit better. But also, I'm less afraid of being judged because I'm focused on getting that value and worth, or revealing the inherent value and worth that was already there from this power. And that happens as we go after and attack these 12 steps. About that as well, I was speaking in column 3 about, man, I'm going to step on toes and not know how to repair relationships. Well, I'll tell you, I'm working these 12 steps as a way of life, like my life depends on it, because it does. That means I'm doing daily prayer, daily meditation. That daily meditation in particular is going to give me a pause that somebody like me does not have organically. And it is going to allow me to have a moment before I speak, to moment before I say and do things, and to be more mindful in the present moment. And I will still make mistakes. And guess what? The process that we're learning right here, that 4 through 9 process, we're going to continue that in the 10th step. And so we're going to see where we're off kilter, we're off base, we've caused harm. And we're going to be practicing in the 10th step and in the evening review in the 11th step, how to identify, how to take it through the columns and how to make it right. And the 9th step prepares me and gives me a lot of practice with restoring relationships. And as a result, I'm less likely to be judged because I'm showing up again as a kinder, healthier person, not perfectly, but as I grow into a healthier person, I'm more likely to have healthier people around me. And what happens is that ladder, that hierarchy that we built, it begins to topple and I experience true humility. And so I don't need to be better than you, and I don't feel worse than you, that I feel like I am an equal. And for somebody like me, that I'm dependent upon God. And what happens then is I'm no longer judging, criticizing, condemning, gossiping. What I'm doing is I'm lifting people up. I'm pumping their tires, and I'm speaking kindness into the world. And as I do that, other people that are around me are more likely to be doing that. Man, if you don't gossip with people, they're going to stop taking the gossip to you because they're like, this is boring, And so I'm less around that sort of stuff and around that energy. But also, as I begin to truly awaken to that inherent value and worth, I begin to practice authenticity, transparency, and vulnerability. And I use some discernment with it as well. I'm not like, hey, strangers, let me tell you my deep, dark secrets. No, but I build that, and I build that over time. And so what that looks like is I practice that in the 5th step. I practice that in the 9th step. We practice that when we do 10th steps with each other, and we practice that when we work with others. And I begin to grow into who I truly am, who God, higher power, creator would have me be, and who I always was, but didn't feel like I could be. And as a result, when we're beginning to live more and more authentically, the opinions of others carry far less weight. And I think I hit all the things I said in column 3, but if I missed one, my bad. But the deeper level is, even if people judge me, don't like me, think poorly of me, if I rely on God, I will be okay. And I will use this experience to help others. Now, we can even say that to the nth degree. If everybody in my life judges me, if I rely on God, I will be okay and use this to help others. And heck, it could be if everyone in my life judges me, I'll be okay. And then I'll go find others, and then they'll judge me, and I'll be okay. You know what I mean? We can just keep going. And sometimes I like to write at the nth degree to see it's not that it's going to be okay. It's not that serious. But if I don't get free of it, it is. So it says fear of being found out, not of what others think. So that's the second fear. And I'm not doing so great for time, but I'll do my best to get to all of them. So fear of being found out. So why do I have this fear? So perhaps because it says it's not a fear of what others think, but perhaps this fear of being found out is I'm going to lose certain reputation that allows me advantages. I'm going to, if I'm found out, it's going to be painful. It's going to make my life more difficult, make things more difficult for me, as an example. So that's what I have kind of for why. Let's go to column 3. So the third column of fear of being found out. how has self-reliance failed me? Now, again, I'm not talking about anyone in specific, and I don't have all the details, so I'm just going from what's between my ears. And if you've been around this thing for a while, you know, like, not much. I think it's circus music. I'm just kidding. You know, the circus music was actually, it's a song that's like the entrance of the gladiators. It's meant to be a fearsome song. Anywho, it was used facetiously. Now it's just, anywho. Well, see what I mean? See what I mean about between the ears? It's an adventure up there. So the third column of fear of being found out. Well, the most obvious third column, or the loudest third column that I can see, is that on self-reliance, I'm behaving in ways that if that behavior gets found out, I'm going to be in trouble. And that's more likely to happen when I'm drinking and in that debauchery. So again, that happens. But again, even when I'm sober, I'm behaving in ways that I know are could cause harm, could damage relationships, could damage other people. So I know that I'm doing things I ought not be doing. And so we can also look at, like, how has self-reliance failed me? Well, I don't know about you guys. Well, I kind of a little bit, but you can let me know. When I am relying on self and I am sober and my illness is untreated, there is a gaping hole in the depth of my soul that nothing can fill. There is a restlessness, an irritability, a discontentedness that pervades my being. And inevitably, if that is untreated long enough, I'm going to take a drink. It's not about if, it's about when. I will take a drink. But I don't know about you guys, but maybe I do. I will grab a hold of things that are damaging, but not quite as bad as that, before I grab a hold of the drink. Sometimes it's like this alcoholic whack-a-mole. You know, we put down the booze and we start coming to meetings, but we haven't fully engaged in this program. These 12 steps is a way of life. And that's when the shoplifting pops up. Shoplifting, the shopping, the relationships, the sex, those are different or can be different, you know. I'm throwing out all those options, right? And so and maybe it's, you know, that career, the career, like, man, I got to be important. I got to be somebody. So we're doing things that are maybe unethical in work to get that sense of status or okayness. Another thing is on self-reliance. You know what I'm not doing? Those 12 steps is a way of life, like my life depends on it, because it does. The result of that is I have no experience with a fifth step. So I have no experience with what it's like to become honest about those deep, dark secrets. And man, if I got no experience with that, I think there's nothing worse than doing that. It makes me want to vomit. Because that's how, not you guys, that's how I am, you know? And again, I have no experience with amends. So I have no experience with making things that I've done wrong right, repairing the damage, and being honest and transparent. And so that fear grows. The other thing is I've got then no experience in working with others. And you might be like, oh, what does sponsorship have to do with this? Well, when I sponsor others and I receive their deep, dark secrets and I help them move through their amends and the things that they've done, man, I see that we're not special. I mean, you guys are, and you're beloved and you're so precious and I love you. But we are so very much the same in so many ways, and different and unique. But like, man, there are some commonalities for surezies. And so I suffer from that terminal uniqueness. You know, I am unique and I am different and I can't do what you do. And as a result, I'm going to frickin' die. That sort of terminal uniqueness. And so let's say the prayer. God, please remove my fear of being found out and direct my attention to what you would have me be. So how can God reliance overcome this fear? Well, I'm going to work these 12 steps as a way of life, like my life depends on it, because it does. The result of that is that I will stay sober. And the result of sobriety is that I'm less likely to do sketchy things. Not completely void of likelihood of doing sketchy things, but less likely. But also, what am I doing? I'm actively and intentionally treating the spiritual malady with the spiritual awakening that happens as the result of the 12 steps. So I'm treating the shame. I'm treating the emptiness. I'm treating the loneliness. I'm treating that hole in my soul. I'm treating the restless, irritable, and discontented state. I am treating that with the spiritual awakening. And as a result, I'm less likely to grab a hold of things that don't belong to me or other people's relationships or grab a hold of the quick, easy fix. And I'll point out, man, instant gratification. If it was so good, why does it only last an instant? Rude. And actually, just like the cycle of judgment and the cycle of gossip, where I'll judge others and gossip about others to give myself a boost to better than ego, but end up feeling worse. It's that exact same thing. I will act in this behavior to give myself a sense of ease, comfort, relief, release. And I end up feeling that remorse and regret. And how do I get out of that? It's that same sort of thing. And it's human. But, for people like us, I can't live there. And so when I treat that spiritual malady with a spiritual awakening, I'm far less likely to act out on that behavior. And I'm also, because I'm meditating, because I'm doing prayers, because I'm practicing the evening review in the 10th step, what I am doing is I'm becoming aware of what's happening in my life. And I start to see and catch when behaviors become problematic, when I'm starting to act in ways that I shouldn't be acting and crossing lines I shouldn't cross. And I'm more likely to be able to ask for help and nip them in the bud. Not on my power, and we'll talk about that in the next sphere. So that's an example of doing that. And so what also happens is I get the experience with the 12 steps. So I get that experience with being completely honest in my 5th step and seeing that I'm not rejected. I get that experience of going out and making those amends, and in 9 cases out of 10, the unexpected happens. It goes well, and that's a surprise, man. And I get the experience of working with others and receiving their inventory, and as a result, and helping them with their amends. And as a result, I see that I'm not as unique and alone as I think I am, and I begin to be a part of humanity, a part of the human race. But the deeper level is, even if I am found out and the terrible, awful consequences happen, if I rely on God, I will be okay. And I will use this experience to help others. And I always do this as soon as I say that last thing, because it'll be the last thing my sponsees write. And I'll be like, oh, one more thing. So the real quick, one more thing. It is that I'm not a PR sort of person, I'm not good at that ego and image maintenance, although, man, I tried. Just my personal ego and my personal image. But whenever there's something like blowing up, I don't want to use the word control, but it goes better if I'm in front of it and I'm dealing with it head on rather than I'm doing the avoidance, So I'll throw that out there. So then what we've got is fear of not having the fortitude to stick to the terms of the results of my 4-step inventory on my finances. So how it was summarized, no, it's okay, don't worry about it. Worried I'll lose my oomph. So it's that worried that window of willingness that I have is going to close. And so why do I have this fear? Because if we understand the nature of humanity, the nature of this illness, that window of willingness, it always closes. And the consequence of that is I'm going to continue to hurt myself and continue to do things in a way that I don't want to do. As an example. So 3rd column, how has self-reliance failed me? And again, we can take it from the most obvious, on self-reliance, hey, I'm going to be drinking. And then don't worry about that financial stuff because that's where all the money's going. But we can also look at on self-reliance. I think I need to operate out of self-will. Like I need to will the window open. I need to will the defects away. I need to overcome my resistance on my own power. And guess what? My own power it ain't it. And I'm just talking about mine. My own power ain't it, sis. I did not need to do the snap. It's not it. So I think I'm trying to overcome and change and be a better person on my own power, and that has not worked for me. And so I'm seeing the futility of that, and that gets me a little anxious, and as a result, I got to spend some money to feel better about that, because that's stressful. And so what happens is, I'll say the prayer. God, please remove this fear that I'm not going to be able to live up to the window of willingness that I have. And that window is going to close, and I'm going to go back into my old behaviors and direct my attention to what you would have me be. I know it's a longer one. So how can God reliance overcome this fear? Well, here's the thing. I'm going to be diving into these 12 steps as a way of life, like my life depends on it, because it does. I'm going to be cultivating momentum. I should have said this in column 3. Often we view momentum as a black and white, all or nothing thing, or willingness as black and white, all or nothing thing. Well, I don't feel like doing it. Guess what? You can be willing to do it, not feel like doing it. So in the 4th column, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those daily actions, the daily action of prayer, meditation, evening review. Now, I happen to know specifically about this situation, and this is a situation where we went through the columns, or are going through the columns, to cultivate an ideal. And this, man, if I saved this one for last, it would have been a perfect tie-in to next week when we talk about sex inventory. But the purpose of sex inventory is to cultivate a sane, sound ideal for that area of our life. But what I found is, if I have other areas of my life that are particularly difficult, I can use those columns to cultivate an ideal. And I can't live up to an ideal. There's no power in an ideal, because it's me being like, I've got to be a better person. I got to pull myself up by my bootstraps. Did y'all know that expression? It was originally an idiom that came from the idea of doing the impossible, because one cannot pull themselves to a standing position from the straps of their boots. So if I'm trying to will myself into willingness, I ain't got it. But what I do is I take that ideal that I have and I turn it into prayers, and I use it in meditation. So I pray the contents of that ideal, and I meditate with the contents of that ideal. And I grow in my willingness to be changed. I grow in my willingness to take the things inside of me that I'm holding on to and to give it to that power. A modified 3rd step prayer is often useful. We spoke about that in step 3. So God, I offer my finances to you to build with and to do with as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self. And we work with that, and we move with that, and we pray with that. And if these areas of our life are troublesome, we throw ourselves the harder into helping others. And as we do that, we get the lived example of how this power works in our lives and takes us to where we need to go. I don't have to do it. I watch a sponsor change in front of me, and it's like, oh yeah, that's how that happens. And so, and then we ask for help in those areas that we need help, etc. But the daily prayer, daily meditation, daily evening review, all of that helps to keep us on track, to build and to deepen that momentum. Deeper level is, even if that window of willingness closes, if I rely on God, which means continuing to take the action, regardless of what I think, feel, or believe, I will be okay. And I will use that experience to help others. And when I work with people, we talk about sponsoring. When I'm resistant to something, if I am present to my resistance, I can use that to help others. Because guess what? Most people's willingness doesn't look like, oh boy, I can't wait to write inventory. Amends, that sounds like a delightful course of action. No, it looks like I'm terrified. I don't want to. I think you're an idiot. Why would you suggest this? But doing it anyways, that doing it anyways, that's what willingness looks like. So then we have a fear of becoming a sponsor. So fear of becoming a sponsor. In column 1, fear of becoming a sponsor. 2, why do I have this fear? Because I'm not going to be good at it. I'm going to wreck them. I'm going to make them drink. I'm not going to have all the answers. I don't know what I'm doing. That's typically the fear. So fear of becoming a sponsor. And in the third column, how has self-reliance failed me? Well, in column 3, I won't do it. I will avoid it. I will put it off. I won't take the action of doing it, and I won't get any experience with it. And as a result, that fear will grow. I will also not engage in activities. So this is what I like to call a softball, which I shouldn't say softball, because if you've seen women play softball, they throw the balls really hard. So it's not a perfect example, but like a softball where it's like, I'm going to toss it, underhand lob it, and it'll be helpful in column 4. So in column 3, I'm going to assume I have to do it. By do it, I mean, I'm going to assume I have to keep them sober. I'm going to assume that I think that I need to have all the answers, that I need to figure it out, and I need to figure it out alone. I avoid asking for help. I avoid coming to places like this where we're breaking down the instructions on how to not just take the actions to get well, but the instructions on how to help others. And that perfectionism, that black and white, all or nothing thinking, and perhaps we have some rigid ideas about what sponsorship looks like. I'm just throwing those out as some column 3 stuff. So God, please remove my fear of becoming a sponsor and direct my attention to what you would have me be. How can God reliance overcome this fear? I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to want to vomit, but I'm going to do it anyways. That's the 12 steps is, do it anyways. So I am going to work these 12 steps as a way of life, like my life depends on it, because it does. And a part of that is taking others through the 12 steps. But what I'm also going to do is I go through these steps. I'm going to be active in doing it. I'm going to dive in, because the more that I dive in, the more experience I have to help others. I promise you, the first time my very first ever sponsee, I did not feel like I could do it. And I sure as heck did not feel I could hang out with almost 40 other people and be like, let's just do your inventory as a big group. I didn't feel like I was capable of that. But here's the thing. The more I take my inventory, the more I make my amends, the more I'm diligent with my prayer, my meditation, the more I practice the 10th step, the more I practice the 11th step, the more I work with others, the more experience I have to help others. And guess what? This whole thing is experiential. In column 3, we spoke about some black and white, all or nothing thinking. Well, guess what I can do? If I'm nervous to sponsor, there's a couple things. These are things that I do with my sponsees. We could do a 2-on-1 where it's my sponsor and myself, and we work together, take them through. One of the things this is what I do with my sponsees is where hey, you're kind of nervous. You want to take them through the doctor's opinion? I'll take you through the doctor's opinion again. We'll have a little refresher, and then you go work with them, right? So we can be a little flexible and be a little curious. One of the things is, as I rely on God and I deepen my experience of understanding of this program, this way of life, and the illness that is alcoholism, I begin to realize I don't have the power to keep them sober. That's not on me. That's on God. That is on the God of their own understanding. My job is just to take their hand and put it in God's hands through this work of the 12 steps. And so what are we going to do? We're going to ask for help. We're going to grow in our humility that we don't have to know all the answers. We don't have to figure it all out. In fact, one of the most powerful things we could do, it's a demonstration to the people that we're helping, is to say, you know what? I'm not sure. If it's okay with you, I'd like to take it to my sponsor, or I'd like to take it to maybe a trusted member who's got more experience on this. And man, doesn't that show our sponsees that they can be humble, that they don't have to know all the answers. And guess what? I learn to sponsor by sponsoring. Now, I talk about this quite a bit, so I apologize for people that might be sick of this. But the way in which I sponsor others, I have never been sponsored in that way. I've never had a sponsor sit with me to read the book with me. I've never had a sponsor sit with me for step 4. I've never had a sponsor give me any guidance on the amends other than go do it, figure it out. Like, I've never had that. But what I found is that's not helpful. That doesn't work, and so through working with others and making mistakes, that ability to grow and to learn and not take myself so seriously. I take the responsibility quite seriously. But man, we don't have to be perfect. We get to ask for help. We get to come to big book studies like this, and we get to learn and practice and all of that. But let's say even if. Now the even if is not even if I don't sponsor, because if I don't do all of this and I have this illness, it's very likely I'm going to drink again. But even if I suck as a sponsor, I'm just the worst sponsor ever. Now, I don't like when I say it like that. If I'm afraid of sponsorship because I'm afraid I'm going to do it bad, that means I care. That already means that I'm doing better than other people. Like, hey, don't be abusive. You're doing great. I've had a sponsor that was incredibly abusive. Like, don't be abusive. You're doing better than that guy. You know what I'm saying? So if you show up with the desire to help, you'll experience a connection with a power greater than yourself, and the instructions that are in this book, man, you'll do all right. You'll do all right. It's all experience. So, all right. I'll probably have time for maybe one more. That's great. One of those was not being a good enough sponsor, so I tied those in. That feels like I did a 2-for-1. Eh? All right. So, fear of my laptop. So I'm going to assume this is a fear of technology. Like, why do I have this fear? Because, man, it's overwhelming. I'm going to hit the wrong button. I don't know how to do it. It's just, what am I doing? By the way, it's just, probably doesn't go in your second column, but, I'm just doing, I'm aware of the time. I'm really pushing it just so I give our dear Peppa some time to wrap up. Thinking of you. So, fear of my laptop. I'm not going to know. It's going to be overwhelming. I'm going to make mistakes. It's expensive and I'm going to break it. I'm going to break it. All right. So why do I have this fear? That's why I have this fear. Column 3, how has self-reliance failed me? On self-reliance, I view technology through this, so through an adversarial lens. I'll explain that more, but I want to hit if this is, let's say it was our first inventory, guess what? When I'm drinking, listen, I have a bachelor's degree, not from a fancy place. I have it from a very non-fancy place in technology. But when I was drinking, trying to laptop with the one eye, it's not happening. It is not happening. It's like, whoa, it's spinning. I can't tell you how often, being sober and then people like, hey, my laptop got covered in beer. I don't know how that happened. Can you help? I'm just saying, we're going to give ourselves the best opportunity, when we're sober. But when we're drinking, hey, we're more likely to break it. We're less likely to be able to comprehend instructions and tasks and all that sort of thing. Now, when I mention that adversarial nature with technology, for me, it often ties in with this. I show up with this perfectionism. And I show up with that perfectionism because I'm dogged by this sense of inferiority, this feeling that I'm not smart enough to do it. And I can't do it, and I'm stupid, and I don't know technology. I felt like that, and I have a degree in technology. I also felt like that about math. I used to be a math tutor. So little spoilers, right? It's a feeling that who I am is not enough. And what happens as a result, I tell myself, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it. That might be some self-fulfilling prophecy. But also, I'm doing that. It makes it overwhelming, and I'm not touching it, and I'm avoiding it. And I'm so afraid of making mistakes, and I can't figure it out, and I don't ask for help. And maybe I've asked for help in the past, but I've done so without discernment. So I'm asking somebody that's very high-strung and angry and irritable for IT support. Don't ask those people. You want somebody that's patient. Ask a patient person. But we're not using that discernment. They're being mean to me. So then what happens is, I say the prayer, God, please remove my fear of my laptop technology and direct my attention to what you would have me be. Well, what's going to happen is we're going to stay sober as the result of these 12 steps, less likely to put beer on the keypad, Just throwing that out there, less likely to drop it, that sort of things. But also, as we stay sober as the result of these 12 steps, we're likely to, be able to comprehend step-by-step instructions and follow things and get some, we're just cognitively going to be a little bit more there. Just throwing that out. Now, also, what is going to happen is I begin to awaken to that inherent sense of self-worth. And I'm not taking myself so seriously. And I give myself the grace to be imperfect. And guess what we can do? Before we have a look at our laptop, we can pray. We can invite our higher power in. We can meditate before we use it. And we can get the experience of changing our perspective. We learn to do that in the 4th step. And that's what we're doing here. So as opposed to being like, the technology's out to get me, I've got some news. The technology industry, it's a billions and billions of dollar industry. Technology is meant to be used. They are making it to be used. So that change of perspective is that technology is on my side and it's trying to work with me. It's going to show me how to be used. I know it feels like, girl, what? But that's that change of perspective. It wants to be used. And that begins to take away that overwhelm. And guess what? We begin to play with it, experiment with it, make mistakes with it. And also we ask for help, utilizing discernment with like kind people, patient people. Not like for those who grew up, I didn't have a father growing up, but I do know that this is a generational trauma. People that had those and they had to hold their flashlights for the fathers as they're working on their car. You'd like, oh, you hold them, you're doing it wrong, like that. Don't ask those sorts of people for help with the technology. Yeah, exactly. So we're going to ask calm, patient people for help with the technology. And I'll share with you that I had to pay back $40,000 in student loans. I did do that. So it was an expensive degree, by the way, which I don't want to use. But you know what my degree was ultimately in? How to Google things. That's what my IT was in. It's like, I don't know. Let me Google it. Let me just look it up. Let me see what the Google says. That's what my degree is in. So again, that letting go of that perfectionism in the 4th column, that curiosity, that self-compassion, that prayer, that inviting in, and that change of perspective. But even if our laptop turns into I'm thinking of like a horror movie, like the chest bursters from Aliens. Let's say even if my laptop turns into the chest bursters from Aliens and starts like trying to eat the neighbors, if I rely on God, I will be okay. And I will use that experience to help others, not the neighbors, but we'll get them out of it. So even if we make mistakes, even if we do it wrong, if we rely on God, we will be okay. And we will use that experience to help others. And unfortunately, I'm out of time. So I don't have, I'll stick around at the end. And so for any extras, the ones I didn't get to, and I'll turn it over to Peppa. Thank you for your patience.